welcome to the Stitch Sessions. Today I have a crochet lesson for you today. And if you're new here, I'm Karen. I love all things to do with crochet and crafting with crochet. And normally I do some fun, cool, different projects with crochet. And every once in a while, I like to do a crochet lesson. And it's basically teaching you a skill that you can use to create any design that you like or to work on any project that you like. So today I've got a couple of these swatches here. And I know many of you love working on things like granny squares, or if you like to create cardigans. Anytime you need to sew two pieces together, there's a couple of different methods that you can use. And I thought I would make this separate video so that way you guys could just click on it and refer to it anytime you like, depending on the project that you are doing. So I'm going to focus on 3 different ways that you can sew your crochet pieces together today. And it's totally up to you which one you prefer. They all work great. And I think without further ado, we're just going to get right to it. Okay, so anytime you are working on sewing up your pieces, you just need whatever project pieces that you're working on. I know most of the time people are using granny squares or square motifs of some kind, whether you're doing a blanket, an afghan, a scarf, cardigan, whatever you may be putting together. It is probably one of the most popular crochet pieces that are sewn together, but could be anything. So just make sure you have that on hand. And then of course, you're going to need a yarn needle, and make sure that it is a yarn needle and not a thread needle. The yarn needle has a little bit of a larger eye so that you can fit your yarn in. So you'll definitely need that. And you will need a piece of yarn in order to sew your pieces together. Now, most of the time we recommend using the same color yarn as your pieces, and that way it'll blend in really, really nicely. I'm using a contrasting yarn today. That way you can actually see the different effects of the types of stitches we're going to use, okay? And then of course, make sure you have a pair of scissors so that you can snip the yarn that you need. So once you've got your materials together, then we can talk about the 3 stitches we're going to use to sew up our projects. Okay, so I've got a couple of swatches here that I've made, and these are all double crochet stitches, and it's 20 stitches across, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows tall. So they're all the same size, and that will be really important to keep in mind when you're sewing pieces together, whatever that may be. You want to have the same stitch count on each side to make life easier. So what we're going to do is, I know that I want to sew these 2 sides together like that. So I'm going to grab a piece of yarn, and I always like to kind of look at the length that I need to sew and then double it. Okay, and you can see I'm being very generous with my doubling, okay? This always just guarantees I'm not gonna run out of yarn. Now, sometimes people make a boo-boo and they go like this, and they go, okay, yep, I've got a little bit left on the end, a little bit. I'm gonna snip this off. The problem with that is whenever we're sewing, the yarn actually has to coil around the stitches, and so it takes more yarn to do that. So what happens if you start with this piece, it's going to shrink down a bit, and you're probably only going to get about halfway through. So I always like to just take the length, double it. I know some people that triple it even, depending on what you're sewing. So I'm just going to double this here. I'm going to snip my yarn, and that is the piece I have to sew my pieces together. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to thread your needle just like that. Okay, and now you want to determine what is going to be your right side and what is going to be your wrong side. Now in this case, these 2 sides are the wrong sides. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take the 2 right sides and I'm going to place them one on top of the other. And the first stitch I'm going to show you, the most common stitch, is known as the whip stitch. And as it sounds, you can quickly whip this together and your pieces are going to come nice and easy together. Okay, so I've got the right sides are facing each other, and I've lined up the edge that I want to sew so you can see the tops of the stitches there. And the first thing I usually like to do is I like to take my yarn needle and insert it into the top of the very first stitch here, and then go into the very first stitch of the corresponding piece. So you can see that's where I fastened off on both of those pieces. and pull through. And a lot of times I'll make a knot. I might even make two sometimes. For this tutorial, I'm just going to make one knot. So now I know that that is the first stitch of each side, and now all the other stitches should line up nice and easy to the end here. So you can do this either from the front and continuously stitch, or you can do this from the back. I tend to like to do it from the back because it's easier for me to see. So with a whip stitch, what you want to do is you're going to move into the next stitch, and I'm coming from the back. So I'm picking up that next stitch, and then I find the corresponding stitch. So I can see that this stitch has already been worked because we tied our knot there. I'm going to go into this next stitch here, and there we go. So this is the second stitch. I'm just going to pull the yarn through, not too tight, but just taut enough that it's secure. And then I go on to the next stitch and I do the same thing. So I just come in from behind, make sure I've got both loops, and then I find the corresponding stitch, which is this one here. And again, I pull it through. So with this stitch, let me just get these tails out of the way here. See, so with this stitch on the wrong side, you will see the stitches moving their way around. Now, again, I'm using a contrasting yarn. Normally you would use the same color yarn, and I'm using two different colored pieces here, again, so you can see the stitch. But for example, if all of these were purple and I was using purple yarn, it would just blend in nicely, okay? So here you are going to see, now there are certain times when you're doing things like different colored granny squares, right? So this method might be an issue for you. And in the other two methods I'll talk about, they might work out better for sewing different colored pieces together. But this is the simplest one. So again, I'm going to go in through the back and then pick up the corresponding stitch. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm always going from back to front, back to front. If you're more comfortable going front to back, that's totally up to you. Both ways work. So I'm going to continue doing a few more of these stitches just to go up along the way. And then I'm going to slightly change this technique just so you can see what the difference would look like. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going in from the back, making sure to pick up both loops. Just like that. So you can really see, when I open that up, you can really see where the stitching is. And when I turn it over, it's not too bad, right? But if I had the same colored yarn, it would blend in nicely. Okay, so this is the whip stitch. It just quickly sews things together. Now, I also sometimes like to do a different way of sewing this using the whip stitch. Instead of going through the whole stitch, sometimes what I'll do, I'll pick up the outside loops of these stitches. So when I go into the next stitch, instead of going in through the whole thing, I'll just pick up this one right here from the outside. So it's just that one there. And then I'll come over and I'll pick up the one from this side. So meaning on the outside of our seam. So I'll skip over this first one here and I'll go into that outside loop here, which would be considered the front loop because it's the one closest to me. So you can see I'm taking the closest one to me and the furthest loop away from me. And that is what I'm going to whip stitch next. Okay, so this technique sometimes helps you to hide that seam on the right side. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick up just one of these loops here, just like that. And then I'm going to come to the stitch across the way, but pick up the outside loop again. Okay, and you can see it is pulling the work a little closer together. So again, one loop and one loop. They have to be on the outside. Okay, you'll see why in a moment when I turn this around. Okay, so there we go. So you can already see the difference between using both loops, the whole stitch, and just the outside loops. So the outside loops, the work sits a little bit closer together. Now, when I turn this over to the right side, here's where you can see the difference. So this is a technique I call the invisible join, and I can use this in the other two stitching methods as well. So you can see the whip stitch comes up prominently when I go through the full stitch. But when I use the outside loops, the inside loops now sit a little bit more snugly together. And if I pull on it a little bit to make it a little bit tighter, you can see that it will butt up against each other beautifully. And from the front, you cannot see that seam. So if you're using different colors, this might be a nice method to use if you are most comfortable with the whip stitch. Now, of course, on the back, you are still going to see that seam, but look at how much tidier this one looks than this one. So this is the full stitch, which I know a lot of people like because you're grabbing more loops of yarn and it makes your work a little bit sturdier. So if you are sewing sleeves to a cardigan, for example, I can absolutely understand why you would like this method better. And of course, you would most likely be using the same color, so it would all blend in. If you're using multicolored pieces, then this method is definitely for you. Okay, so that is the back and that is the front. So this is the full stitch and these are the outside loops. So this is the whip stitch method. Now, let's take a look at method number 2. Okay, so for method number 2, I'm going to bring in another piece here, and actually I have quite a long tail here. I don't know if it'll be enough, but it might be enough to sew up this side here. Let's give it a try. So for method number 2, we are going to use something called the mattress stitch. Now, the mattress stitch is often confused with the third method I'm going to show you, which is called the ladder stitch. And sometimes both of these are called the mattress stitch, but they definitely are different. So method number 2 I'm going to show you is the mattress stitch. And for this stitch, you can actually leave your work with the right sides facing up, and I would keep them side by side. So I'm just going to thread my needle here. And so with the mattress stitch, what we're doing is we're always kind of bringing the needle up from the wrong side and up, from the wrong side and up. And there's like a little bit of a crisscross effect with the yarn, and it just helps to really snuggle up the two pieces together beautifully. You'll get a very similar effect to this one here with the outside loops. So again, I'm going to do what I did earlier. I'm just going to bring these two wrong sides. Pay attention, this is the wrong sides. And I'm just going to insert my hook into the very first stitch here and the first stitch here to just secure the two pieces together. Now, normally I would do a knot, but because this was the end here, I'm just going to leave it as is because I'm going to continue to go down the way. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so I've turned my work a little bit. And so now what I'm going to do, it's coming up through the front piece here. So now I'm going to work across. So you're zigzagging across here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the back piece here. And technically I've already worked through the first stitch here. So I'm going to go into the second stitch here and I'm going to insert my needle from the back or from the wrong side up through the front. That is the good side. Okay, just like that. I'm going to leave this a little loose here for a moment just so you can see the effect. Then I'm going to come back to the front piece, find the next stitch, and do the same thing. I'm going to come up from the wrong side and push up through the right side. So can you see how it's kind of going under and up, under and up? Probably not yet because we don't have enough stitches. So I'm going to do that again. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across back to the back piece. I'm going to find the next stitch, which is right here. And again, I'm going to insert from the wrong side up through the top, just like that. I'm going to put that down. Then I'm going to pick up my front piece. And again, I'm going to do from the wrong side up through the top. So now you can kind of see, hopefully, how they're crisscrossing each other. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to go to the back piece from underneath. And then I'm going to go to the front piece from underneath. So there you go. You can see kind of a lace-up like effect, just like that. Okay, and now what I'm going to do just to show you is I am going to pull this a little bit tighter, and you should be able to see that it butts the two pieces of work up together very nicely. You can't even see the purple. See that? They are just intertwined together. And now when I turn over, it absolutely disappears. So even though I had a completely different color, so I've got yellow, gray, and my sewing yarn was purple, you don't even see it from the back. So if you're the type of person who really likes a truly seamless look, the mattress stitch might be for you. Now I'm going to keep going here. So I was just keeping it loose to show you guys, but you should be kind of just snuggling it as you go. So you just come back and forth, always from under, and then just snuggle it in a wee bit, and then continue. Under to the front, and under to the front. And then I just give it a little pull there, and it snuggles these in nicely together. Now I do want to show you how you can also do this using that outside loops only technique. If you like the idea of having a nice ridge, a nice straight ridge that butts up against each other and it's nice and tidy. So it'll be the same thing. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my work with the wrong sides together. And this time, because the wrong sides are together, I'm going to simply pick up the inside loops, okay? So this is just another variation on the same stitch, mattress stitch. So now instead of coming up from under, I'm going to come up from under here, but only pick up one of the loops, okay? Just like that. Then I come back and I do the same thing here. So I just pick up one of these loops, not the whole stitch. So it's the loops that are closest to each other, okay? And then I go back across. Now this one has already been worked, see that? So then I go to the next one, pick up one loop only, and then come back across here and pick up only the inside loop. So when your right sides of your work are facing out, you work the inside loops only. If the wrong sides of your work are facing out when you're sewing, you use the outside loops only if you're doing this, what I call the invisible method, even though this is also pretty invisible. Okay, so I'm going to do a few more here. Inside loop and inside loop. Inside loop and inside loop, just like that. So I'm pulling these nice and tight, and then I'm just stretching it out. So now, when I lay my work out, it creates the same effect as this one. So let me just zoom out here a little bit. So it just gives you a nice, clean edge that butts up against each other. This one does the same thing. So even though the mattress stitch really cinched everything nice and close together, this one does the same thing, but see how you can see where this nice clean ridge is coming through? That's a really nice look as well, okay? So that you have a nice defined edge between the two colors, as opposed to this one that's kind of bleeding or blending in. Totally a personal preference, right? So if I turn this over, they both blend in nicely, but see how much closer this one sits in? Again, anytime you use those loops, whether outside or inside, it just really meshes the two pieces together, or I call it, it melts these two pieces beautifully together, okay? So I'm just gonna finish this up here. So this is the mattress stitch using the inside loops only, and this is method number 2. So this is a variation on just the regular mattress stitch. And the first method we did was the whip stitch, and we also did the same thing. We did it going through the full stitch and then through the outside loops only. So I'm just going to finish up these 2 little stitches here, and then so let me just pull that out there. There we go. So that worked out great. I already had a tail there. Okay, so we've got the whip stitch with the 2 variations, and we've also got the mattress stitch with the 2 variations. So you can definitely see the ridge there, and this one just sits close together. See, so both of these have a nice clean ridge. Okay, let's go on to method number 3, which is one of my favorites actually, and it is the ladder stitch. So I'm going to bring out another swatch here, and I'm going to show you guys how I like to use the ladder stitch to sew a lot of my pieces together. Okay, so I have another purple piece here, so you can see they're all the same number of stitches. So what I'm going to do for the ladder stitch is I'm going to decide whatever my right sides are going to be, and I'm going to place my work right sides together. Okay, and I've got another piece of pink yarn here, and I'm going to thread my needle. Okay, so I'm going to start with the right sides together. Again, I'm going to secure my yarn by going in through the first stitch, and this is a chain 3 here, so I'm just going to go into the top of that chain, and then maybe I'm going to, and then I'm going to just knot it here. Okay, now with the ladder stitch, we are working either, whoops, you can start from front or you can start from back. A lot of times I'll start for the back. So what you're doing is you're going from front to back, go into the next stitch from front, sorry. In my case, I'm going to be starting from back to front. So you would start from back to front, then find the next stitch and go from front to back. Back to front, front to back, okay? So it creates like a little bit of a snake or a ladder effect going all the way up your work. So I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to find my next stitch, which is right here. I'm going to go in from the back, find the corresponding stitch, and bring my yarn through. Okay, and now I'm going to go into the next stitch, and this time I'm going to go from the front and go out the back in the corresponding stitch. Okay, into the next stitch I go from the back to the front. So you can see it's just creating a bit of a ladder, and then I go from the front to the back here, and I'm leaving these a little bit loose just like I did before so you can see the effect. So from the back to the front, and always work into the very next stitch, and then from the front to the back. I'll do that one more time, from the back to the front, and then from the front to the back. Okay, so you can see the effect here. You can see it go in and out just like that. And then when you see it here, it looks like a ladder, and that's why it's called the ladder stitch. Now, of course, as you go along, you actually do want to just cinch this a little bit tighter. I just left it loose so you guys could see what it looks like. Okay, so you would just, not too tightly, but you just cinch it along as you go. And so this is the wrong side, okay, which actually looks pretty good. You can see the stitches here if you had a contrasting color. And then on the right side, it works pretty decently. It butts everything up against each other. You can just see the contrasting color poking through. Okay, so again, if you had the same colored yarn, you would be just fine. I do like this ladder stitch. It just snuggles everything up nice and securely, especially if I'm doing things like cardigans. I think I kind of prefer this over the whip stitch. I just feel like it has a little bit more girth to it. Okay, just like that. Now, the actual precise method that I like to use when I use the ladder stitch is actually the outside loop method. And that was the variation on the whip stitch here. And of course, you probably guessed it. Why I like it is because it creates a nice clean edge. So here is the variation. I'm going to continue with the ladder stitch, but instead of the full stitch, I'm going to pick up the outside loops. So I have this loop, then I go to the outside of that stitch there. And I just work the ladder stitch like normal. So I come from the front, but only one loop, and then the back to the outside loop there, same thing. And I just snuggle it a little bit in, outside and outside, just like that. So same idea, same method, just a slight technique variation. And so in a way you have 6 options because each of the 3 has a variation on how you do it. I bet you didn't realize there were so many different ways that you can sew your crochet items together. But each has its benefit, and a lot of it just comes down to personal preference, right? So I'm just gonna make sure I snuggle that in nice and evenly there. And then I'm just gonna go right to the end here, and then the last stitch outside and outside, just like that. Okay, so just make sure you straighten it out if you need. So this is what it looks like from the back. So you can see here, there's a little bit of bulk because it's using the whole stitch. When I use just the outside loop, hopefully you can see that. See how there's a little bit of bulk? Here it sits beautifully nice and flat. Now when I turn it to the right side, look at how gorgeous this looks. Ta-da! So it's beautifully butting up one to the other. It has a gorgeous straight edge here, and it really does hide that contrasting yarn color. So if you're using different colored pieces, it does a great job there. And of course, if you're using the same color, it's fantastic. And so you can see when you don't use the outside loops, it brings it together and it is nice and secure, but it just doesn't have that same tidy effect. Yeah. So in all 3 of these methods, I think you guys will be able to tell which is my favorite variation. And that is all the variations where we used just outside or inside loops. Now, I know some people might feel a little bit iffy about that because it seems so precarious just to use one loop on each side as opposed to the whole stitch. I know some people feel more secure using the whole stitch. It's totally up to you. And I think it would also depend on the type of project that you're doing. Like maybe you're making a crochet bag. Perhaps you would want to use the whip stitch and go through both loops on each stitch to make it more fortified. So again, different reasons for different types of techniques. But these are the 3 main ways that you can sew your pieces together. So I hope that you found this really interesting, and perhaps it perked up your interest on sewing things up in a different way than you had considered previously. And if you actually have a 4th or a 5th method that I have not touched on, let me know. But I'm pretty sure these are the top 3 stitches that people use to sew up their projects. But I'm always curious to check out other techniques. So I hope you found this crochet lesson really clear, easy, and concise to follow. And I hope that you will save this in a little playlist for yourself the next time you need to sew up a crochet or a knit garment together. And if you have any further questions, as always, you know you can pop it for me down in the comment box down below, or some of you do like to email me directly, so feel free to do that. You can email me at info@crochetcrafty.com. And I always invite you to come check out the website, crochetcrafty.com. There's a lot of fantastic crochet resource tools for you, sizing charts. There's even a planning checklist there for you. Tons of free written patterns, as well as a link to my Etsy shop. All right, guys, so that's it for me this week. I hope that you have a lot of fun working on sewing up all of your projects, whatever they may be, and continue to enjoy the craft of crochet. So take really good care of yourselves, guys. Have an amazing day, and I will see you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.